Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guests, with host Christina Nitchman.
Our sponsor for today is Regina Huber, speaker, coach, and founder of Transform Your Performance. She helps businesswomen move into their positive yes energy and find their magnetic power and confident presence so they can step into the spotlight and into their role as leaders. Her clients include entrepreneurs and corporate executives who want to move to the next level of their business or career faster and more powerfully, and of course to create more wealth for their companies and themselves. To find out more about Regina and her business, visit transformyourperformance.com. Hello everyone, and welcome to Savvy Central Radio. This is your host, Christina Nitchman. Each week, Savvy runs weekly broadcasts providing entrepreneurs and successful individuals a platform to express their dreams, hopes, lessons learned, expertise, and wisdom with the world. Our guest today is Adam Kokesh. Adam joined the U.S. Marines at age 17 and volunteered for combat duty in Iraq in 2004. This critical experience showed him that war is a racket and led him to deeply question his most cherished statist beliefs. He first rose to fame as an anti-war activist before branching out into other areas, often taking action too risky for other activists. In 2010, he became an independent journalist as Adam versus the Man. Today, Adam joins us to talk about his new book, Freedom, and his tour. To find out more about Adam and get his book today, visit thefreedomline.com. Hi, Adam. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you?
Outstanding. Thanks for the opportunity to come on.
Well, I'm excited to have you out here. You're out for our State of the Nation segment on Savvy Central Radio. We wanted to bring attention to some of the greatest problems and challenges facing the nation to our audience so that we could all, as a citizenry, make changes for the better for our nation. So share with the audience a little bit about your background and what led you to becoming a talk show host, activist, and author of your newest book, Freedom.
Well, it's a long and disturbing story. I'll try to make it as short and pleasant as possible, but I grew up in an upper-middle-class neighborhood in the Bay Area, and my parents got divorced when I was 10, which did put a certain tweak in the normal programming of a child's relationship with authority. And I joined the Marine Corps to get away from the situation there and, assert my independence. And in a sense, becoming a paid killer for bankers and politicians was an act of rebellion because I was rebelling against my parents. And I learned a lot in that experience. I joined the reserves because I was expected to go to college. And while in college, I volunteered to go to Iraq and did 7 months in Fallujah in 2004 with the Marines. Now, to back up a second, there was a point in high school when I was asked, well, do you want to be a Democrat or a Republican? And I was like, wait a second. Those guys are all really lame. There's got to be an alternative. And I saw the Libertarian Party, and that was my gateway to the message eventually, but then I didn't even understand it. It was just, leave me alone, sign me up for that. And, of course, a lot of it appealed to me, but I really did not understand freedom. And, to me, the word libertarian simply is someone who believes in freedom. And there are a lot of people who call themselves that who don't understand it, and I was one of them. And it took me 10 years. So I went to Iraq in 2004. I came back and was dealing with my own issues until I volunteered to go back because I didn't get a Purple Heart the first time. And then I got in trouble for having brought a pistol back the first time. I got demoted from sergeant to corporal the day after they gave me a Navy Commendation Medal for my time in Fallujah the 2 years prior. And then I got out. I moved to Washington, D.C. to get a master's in political management and came across Iraq Veterans Against the War, and I saw it, and I didn't realize I really barely knew anything about anti-war activism at the time, but it was just I got to have my name on that list, and I fell into it full-time, dropped out of school, was touring around the country, speaking, doing counter-recruiting, encouraging resistance within the military, and speaking out in every way we could. And then I found myself surrounded by other veterans who were really well-meaning dudes, and I absolutely knew that they were in it for the right reasons, and they were putting their lives on the line in their activism. You know, we got arrested a lot doing a lot of different civil disobedience stuff, mostly symbolic rather than technically correct, challenge a law kind of civil disobedience, but getting arrested in protest, that kind of thing. And we were getting into some really beautiful, deep political conversations when they would come down to matters of opinion. And I wasn't satisfied with that. Just somehow a sense of intellectual integrity creeped up in the back of my mind that said, no, if we're really all genuinely doing this because we care about humanity, because we want to maximize human happiness, we want to minimize suffering, we want to move the world forward, there has to be a right answer to what should education policy be, what should foreign policy be. And I was debating from the perspective of what unfortunately was a corruption of the Libertarian Party's presentation of what is a beautiful, moral, ethical, philosophical, anti-political message, and perverted it into being about political issues. And I was taking it from that perspective. And what I did is in my own research, and it was while I was running for office, I moved back to New Mexico, where I went to high school, to run for Congress. And while I was running, I read Ethics of Liberty by Murray Rothbard. And I think by the time I did, all of the pieces were already there floating around in my brain, but seeing it presented as one complete picture is what did it for me. And that was what made me a voluntarist, anarcho-capitalist, all of those more specific philosophical terms that describe what is based on the simple human existence fact of self-ownership and the non-aggression principle, and that all those things that we want to maximize are made that much better when all human relationships are voluntary and free of force, fraud, and coercion. So I couldn't shut up when the race was over, so I got a radio show in Albuquerque, and right before it was going to be canceled because I didn't want to sell any ads, I got picked up for a TV show in D.C. And when that got canceled for political reasons 4 months later, because I was willing to be openly critical of Putin despite being on Russia Today, I decided to go independent on the internet, and I've been striking out on my own since then, and along the way doing various acts of civil disobedience, some of which are painful, boring flops you've never heard of, some of which are famous viral videos. So it's been a long, winding journey until I did 4 months in jail the year before last for loading a shotgun in D.C. I certainly enjoyed my government-induced, taxpayer-funded spiritual retreat, and while I was there, I got the idea for the book. And the book is about presenting this message of freedom as in an anti-political message, not a political message, an anti-political message. What is that, you might ask? It is the beautiful thing that you get to share with people when you say, hey, this is an incredible truth that I have embraced for myself, that has made my life better, that has made me happier, that has empowered me to engage in the world in a better way, and I want to share it with you. Check this out. And that's the spirit in which the book is written.
I love it. I love it. And from all that you've been through and now where you've come to today through all of your experiences serving abroad and then coming to your own understanding of what's really going on in the world and in this nation, what do you see as one of our greatest challenges that plague the nation right now in the United States?
Well, especially after what I just said, I'm inclined to say that I don't see this as an American problem. America is leading the world in empire and in violence and in some of the worst examples of statism, but it is by no means a monolithic global power, and it is by no means a monopoly on statism as a global phenomenon. And so the challenge that I see as the biggest single one is a challenge facing humanity, which is the paradigm of statism, the Stockholm syndrome, the having the fact that we haven't that not yet a critical mass of us have realized government to be the racket it is, and have come together in a way to move humanity past it. And that's the same as the biggest problem facing America. But again, here, I think patriotism is a sign of weakness of mind and collectivism and tribalism. But there is one thing about America that I do truly appreciate that you could say makes me a patriot, and that is the role that the American story played in moving humanity forward from monarchy to democracy. And that was a critical step. And the next step is to abolish government altogether through localization, taking governments apart from the top down. And in America, we have the opportunity to lead the world once again because we have a structure of states where we can take a major step forward without even changing the texture of statism, so to speak, by abolishing the federal government and returning all of its authority to the states.
Mm-hmm. So basically what it would be is legislation would be done at a state level for each state, and we would just get rid of all the federal messing aroundness of what's going on in the nation.
Right. So for people who, I mean, you don't even have to convince people to give up any particular element of statism, but simply to embrace that at least states are going to be more in line with the will of the people when they're localized. And the ultimate conclusion of that is that government should be localized all the way down to the individual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because right now, I think people, when I talk to people and they say, well, you know, I do have a right. I get to go out and vote during the federal election when the mayor comes out. But
Yeah, you're a slave who can choose their master every 4 years.
Yeah, exactly. But in essence, I tell them, well, who's paying the master's salary? Not you and I, but the corporations and the lobbyists. They're paying their salary. So when they get into office, who do you think they're serving? Not us.
Yep.
And usually they're dumbfounded and they say, well, it's better than nothing. I'm like, really?
That's the Stockholm syndrome. They cannot engage rationally. It's avoidance. And that's not everyone, of course. That's a significant part of the population. And the way I see the demographics breaking down, we have about 60% of the population who vote enthusiastically in presidential, or excuse me, 60% of the population who vote consistently in presidential elections. And of those, half of them vote enthusiastically. And you're not going to win those people over with this. They need a lot of therapy before they're ever ready to accept this simple truth of nonviolence. That such is their attachment to state violence. But then you have the people who vote reluctantly, who understand that on some level it's a scam, and those are people that we can reach. Those are people who are receptive. Of the other 40%, about half of them are apathetic. You're not going to change a person's attitude towards the entire world. Again, therapy is more like caring than your activism outreach. But there's 20% who don't vote conscientiously because they understand that it's a racket. So you add up that 30% and that 20% that are receptive there, you got half the population. Who are we right now in terms of people who understand that freedom is a moral principle that can at least attempt to apply it consistently? I'd say we're hard-pressed to say we're a third of a percent of the population, which would be more than 1 million people. We're not even 1 million yet. So for me, this book and what I'm doing with my activism now really is focusing on the metric of winning converts. It's not to a dogma, of course, it's to the anti-dogma, but it's to a fundamentally different way of thinking. You don't have to be like Sisyphus going and rolling the rock up the hill over and over again, knocking on doors for candidates or for issues, when you take the time to actually grow the movement, when you take the time to reach out to people one-on-one. And the book has proven an incredible tool for people who are ready for waking up on their own and looking for it, but more importantly, it's provided a tool for people who want to share this message. And it's really been beautiful to see how people are embracing that.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I'm curious here, and this is something I think is very important because we've been raised actually to think in terms of violence first. You know, we have an enemy out there, and I was just talking to our upcoming guest, Lionel, about the polarization with the citizens around the nation on police against citizen and citizen against police. And so now you talk about how can we get governments at a local level break down the federal government without using violence. How would we be able to do that? What would be your solution to that?
Well, you'll never overthrow a violent system successfully with a violent revolution. And I don't mean this just in an abstract philosophical sense. This is actually something statistically demonstrated in history, that nonviolent revolutions are more successful. And if your goal is a legitimate one, which is to establish a nonviolent society, you can only use violence in self-defense, and then it can be justified, but even then, it's not helpful in the ultimate goal of abolishing statism. What we need is a paradigm shift, and when it comes to dismantling the state, once we have a critical mass, it's going to be simply a matter of voting of someone running for office, and I'm running for president in 2020 on the platform of a peaceful, orderly dissolution of the entire United States federal government in 4 years. Because I think people are ready for that. But when you have a critical mass that can drive something like that, that can at least just convince 50% that they'd be better off being governed more locally than more distantly, more centrally, then we're going to start to see the shift in localization. And as you know, this is in Chapter 10 of the book, in which my analysis shows how we are inevitably progressing to a voluntary society. It is in the nature of our DNA, of human evolution, of the progress of society. Whether you believe in the biological phenomenon of evolution or not, the historical trend is clear. And all of those things are driven by increases in awareness, connectedness, communications technology, productive capacity, overall information access, and all of those things that are driving this shift are following exponential growth curves. And that is so exciting to see, because people question this, and people put me on the spot, and I've had the devil's advocate thrown at me 100 different ways on this, and the theory holds true that the progress towards a stateless society is inevitable, at least from all the conversations that I've had. And there is a couple of obvious caveats, like, if an asteroid hits the Earth, it's not going to happen. If we blow each other all up with a nuclear war first, it's not going to happen. And that does suggest a certain urgency to dismantling at least, the nuclear powers of the world. But what it really speaks to for me is that you don't have to do this. There's no mandate. There's no emotional bullying. I don't tell people to be afraid. I tell people to be happy. I tell them to be true to themselves. And I think the highest calling that we can ever take on as human beings is to serve our greatest vision for what the universe can be, for what our world can be, for what our society can be. And I see a voluntary society. And that's the vision that I want to serve. It's entirely selfish. I really, I care about other people because I want to see them flourish, because it pleases me to see people flourish. It is entirely within my head, and it is entirely my own vision that I serve. But I know that I am happiest because I serve this higher calling. And I think other people realize this too when they see this. And it's not that you have to, it's that you get to. You get to participate in this. You get to be a part of this next step forward for humanity. You get to shape this beautiful process. And that's just such an incredible thing when the human will is allows itself to serve that higher purpose, to engage in the world in that way. And, for me, that's what motivates me. Unless you can tell me that any of these curves are not continuing exponentially, you can't say that society is going to somehow get more violent. And you got to remember, that's all government is. Society, we are actually already living in the most peaceful times in human history, where you as an individual are less likely to be subject to violence at the hands of a human being now than ever before. And that's a beautiful thing to step back and celebrate and appreciate and to know, because humanity, life itself, is such a beautiful phenomenon that is always seeking harmony. We might call it the free market. We might call that capitalism. But what is it? True interaction without violence, without coercion, a greater harmony in society. And that's where we're going right now.
Yeah. And what I'm getting from you is that really it's a shift in perspective in your mindset, because freedom, I don't really ever think comes from outside of you. It's not granted to you by laws and opinions of others. It's really something already in your human heart and soul. And so then
Absolutely.
I ask, because I think some will think, well, we're already perfect in the United States. Everything's perfect. We're the best land in the universe. And we're already free. Are we already free? And if not, why?
It's almost, even now, though, the people that try to assert that get laughed off the stage. I mean, it is really only among the sycophants in the major political parties that you can have a guy in a suit and tie go up and say America's great because we're free. And you can make arguments for relative freedom, but that's not an excuse for the police state or the regulation system or the taxation level in this country that is theft, or the debt that is intergenerational child abuse when people are born into debt slavery in this country. And I'll tell you, it's been something that I've been able to apply to my own life in a way, because I don't try to accumulate wealth. I don't material wealth that can be stolen. And I put myself in a unique position, at least with my career, and giving this book away for free, it's an investment in my reputation capital. I'm confident enough. I mean, I know how to homestead, and I'm actually working on putting together a Freedom Homestead workshop, although this is still pre-announcement teaser, I guess you could say, because I know I can always survive. I can live off the land if I have to. I can feed myself. And that basic confidence in ourselves as human beings is completely beaten down under statism. Very few people have that intact when it is innate in our humanity, in a sense, to be self-sufficient. Yes, we're a communal species, but to never be dependent on another human being for your life that way. And it's really sad that we have been so herded into cities and corporate jobs that make us miserable. And if you really allow yourself to be free and see, and this is capitalism, to see the value in the intangibles, to understand that a marriage is an exchange of the most precious value that two humans can share, of time and love and attention and affection, and whatever other specific commitments happen to go with your deal. But to see the value in all the other things in the experience of life, true capitalism is not about maximizing numbers and dollars. It's about maximizing value and happiness.
Yeah. And bringing your greatest talents and gifts to the world to the utmost. And I think, and it's interesting, I think people insinuate that capitalism equals greed, and it doesn't have to, not at all. And now I want to ask you, though, Adam, because people will think, okay, we are a free and democratic society. And
well, hold on. It is greed. By any definition. I was thinking about this as you said. Maybe I'm just being a contrarian here, but if I may, I am the greediest man on earth. I want the world to be as free and flourishing as possible to serve my vision. I don't harm anyone in satisfying this, because to harm someone else is to be less greedy. A guy who wants nothing but money isn't as greedy as I am. I am far greedier. A man who is greedy with money, who's willing to hurt people because for money, he just wants a certain amount of material security for himself. That's not very ambitious. I'm the greedy one. I want the world to be safe and secure and happy.
I like that perspective, because that's not usually how I hear of the two put together.
And some people will define greed in a different way that negates everything I just said, fine. But in terms of being self-serving in the highest order, yeah, you can pin that on me, absolutely.
And you mentioned something before which I thought was interesting, and it's brought to me certain ideas. Like, I've seen over recent years, after 9/11, this intense brought to our nation of patriotism. And whereas there's a certain part of patriotism which kind of unites us and brings us together as a people and looks at our best parts. But then I've seen another part of patriotism that's been very, well, should you say it, not so pretty. And is patriotism a good thing? Can it be used for good, or is it kind of with disastrous results?
Now, patriotism in its nature, and you can twist the definition of the word, but to be a patriot, to love one's country, I mean, you could call me a patriot because I love the world, but I don't really recognize the borders drawn on a map by politics and circumstance of history to be relevant to where my love is applied. I don't love America because it happens to fall within the borders that it currently exists in, but because of the American tradition, ethos, and the story of the American Revolution. You know, that's what I love. I can't say I love the land, I love the country, I love the people, and I absolutely do. But I would never identify my love as uniquely based on the borders of a country. Now, I guess in my case, having traveled around the country as much as I have, I do have a unique love for certain people in the United States, and the freedom movement here is, from what I can tell from the internet, better and more flourishing than anywhere else in the world. And I certainly love seeing that everywhere I go on this tour.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because it recalls to me many years ago, I went to a concert, and it was a concert run by the Embassy of Spain in New York City. And so there were concerts and players from all different parts, from northern Spain, southern Spain, middle of Spain. And what I found interesting is every single artist I got up on the stage, everyone was cheering their part of Spain as being the greatest part. Viva Sevilla! Viva Madrid!
Mm-hmm.
One woman in the audience said, Viva España! Because, everyone's forgetting we're one people.
Right, but then again you go,
hello,
Viva todo. What's the Spanish word for the world? I should know this. I took figures.
Mundo. Viva el mundo, right?
El mundo.
El mundo.
Yeah, viva el mundo,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I want people to find out how they can find out more about your book and more about you, Adam. Tell people how they can find out more about you. And I know you're touring, so let people know about that.
Yeah, we're about a quarter of the way through the main part of our tour right now, and we started in LA a month and a half ago. We got 4.5 more months on the road. I'm in Austin, Texas right now, and we're going to be heading east from here. Actually, west first. We've got Lubbock, Midland, Waco, back down to San Antonio, Houston this next week, and then we go east to Florida, north up to New Hampshire for Pork Fest. We'll be hitting New England in July, northern Midwest in August, and the West Coast in September. All of this is available at thefreedomline.com, where you can find my YouTube channel, where we just cleared 40 million views, and 42 million, excuse me. And you can find the book there, as you mentioned. We're charging for paper copies, but you can download it for free in every single digital format possible, including as an audiobook. We have a nonprofit set up right now that is a tax-exempt organization, and if anybody wants to help us give away books for free, that's what we're able to do on the tour, because we had an Indiegogo campaign last year, and I'm just so grateful for everybody who made that possible, and for me, most of them on the road. So hope to see you out there. Our tour calendar is on there as well. And we have some gaps. If there are people who want to help host events still, send us an email, adam@thefreedomline.com.
Absolutely. I'm hoping to see you when you guys come here to New York. You're doing amazing work. And it's true. I know this is something from the heart and from your soul, because I got my copy many months ago, as my friend told me, you've got to check out this book. It's amazing. And I downloaded it, read it, and listened to it. So, yeah, it's great information for everyone in this entire nation and the world to get together as one unit to build an amazing community of mankind and people, that we can all help each other grow to our fullest potential. So, Adam, I want to thank you and your entire team.
Hey, my pleasure, and thanks for being a part of this. It's good to have. I mean, you always know the best people are the ones that jump on this first, and we are the early adopters. We are so fortunate to have this incredible opportunity to shape our destiny. I'm happy to have you being a part of it.
Oh, thank you, Adam. Before we head on out, is there any last words you'd like to give our audience regarding this and your book, or anything in your mission that you are doing right now?
Yeah, well, I'll just say one thing that I think a lot of people who are already tuned into this fundamental message need to hear, which is, if you have the courage to think differently, you should have the integrity to live as differently and be that much more free and set an example for the people around you and live better.
Absolutely. Fabulous way to end our interview together. Thank you so much, Adam, for coming and sharing your wisdom and talents today.
My pleasure.
Savvy Central Radio is home to over 100,000 listeners per month globally, and runs in syndication on 7 AM/FM platforms, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities, or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out to the world, call 718-713-2289 or email at savvycentralradio@gmail.com.